Hello everyone, my name is Kevin Pham, and today I'm going to present my Titanic dataset analytics. As we all know that the day Titanic cruise ship sank was a historic day of the whole world population because of its fame and hope from people at that time. Titanic cruise ship was the largest and most luxurious cruise ship in the world at that time. It was built by Bruce Ismay and Lord James Peary on April 10, 1912. The largest ship in the world set sail from Southampton, England, and expected to reach New York, USA within a week. Unfortunately, on its fourth day at sea, Titanic collided with an iceberg after several warnings from other nearby ships. This caused the starboard bow in the middle of the ship break and 5 watertight compartments to enter the water. On April 15, the ship broke into two and sank on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Of the 2,200 people who were on board at that time, 1,523 died on that fateful day because there were not enough lifeboats and the freezing water. Now, we move on to the description of the dataset. This dataset is taken from Cargo's datasets, which is an open web service platform for data. And in this project, we only use the training data to analyze. This dataset includes 12 columns and 892 observations. There are 12 features, which are passenger ID, which is the ID of the passengers. Survive is whether passengers survive or not. 0 means no. 1 means yes. P class is passenger class. There are 3 classes: first column, third class. Number of the passenger, gender, number of siblings and spouse, number of parents, ticket number, passenger fare, cabin, and port of embarkation. Next, in the exploratory data analysis, we use charts, graphs, to visualize data on the dependent variable, which is of survival, and the independent variables, which is gender, age, etc. in the dataset. From that, we can conclude to see whether those independent variables affect the survival chances of passengers. This project is to find out the surviving chance of passengers on the Titanic ship. Therefore, there are some hypotheses that I made. The first one is there any relationship between survival and class? Is there any relationship between survival and gender? Do people paid more fare have high chance to survive than the others? Is there any relationship between survival and age? Does having siblings on board affect the opportunities of survival? Is there any relationship amongst survival rate, gender, and age? First, let's have a look at the number of men and women in the dataset. There were 577 males and 324 females in the dataset. Because the number of male is higher than female, we might see that the number of men died will be higher than women. Now, let's compare the number of survival and class. As you can see that there were around 55% of third class people and 20% of second class people. And the number of first class people was 24%. According to the chart, we can see that the number of the first class passengers survived the incident was highest, with around 16%. Accordingly, people in the third class level could not make it and took around 42%. Only people in first class level had higher rate of survival than the others class. Now, what about survival and fare? As can be seen in the bar chart, people who paid more fare could make the incident. In contrast, although the number of people who paid more for their fare was less than the others, we noticed that nearly 400 people who paid less fare died on that fateful night. Therefore, the order of fare could be applied for these people during a evacuate time. Now we can compare survival and siblings. As you can see in the chart, the number of dead people who did not have siblings were highest. This is correct because more than 70% of the passengers did not have their siblings on board with them at that time. Maybe they could not afford tickets for their family members. However, there's nothing to prove that having siblings or not will affect your survival rate at that time. So now we can analyze survival and age from the chart. We can also see that most of people die were young and they are in their 20s. They took 20% of the total passengers on the ship that night. Also, we can tell that the age of most dead people was in range of 10 to 30, which was around 42%. People in their 70s and 80s are considered to be outliers in this data set because there were not a lot of people at that age on the ship that night. Now, let's compare age and gender and survival. Most of the people on board were young, and based on the experience with the gender and survival rate, it is clearly that most people died that night were young men. Furthermore, you can see that the majority of survivors were female below the age of 30. And in conclusion, gender and class play an important role in survival rate of passenger on Titanic cruise ship because, on that night, women and children were prioritized to evacuate first, and then after it's going to be men and other people and older people. People who paid more fare would have high chance to survive because they paid more fare. It means that they are first class customers, so they would be prioritized to evacuate. Number of siblings was not related to survival rate, and most people died were young men as there were more men than women on board. So this is all for my Titanic dataset analytics, and thank you for listening.